Welcome to the third and final day of the ADB Healthy Oceans Tech and Finance Forum. My name is Anna Oposa. I am a marine conservationist by profession and a storyteller by passion. And I'm your MC for today and the moderator of the Circular Plastics Economy Clinic. Yesterday, day 2, we started with a keynote speech from Gad Mejia, followed by deep dive sessions across a deep dive and spotlight sessions across our 4 thematic tracks. We had plastic-free oceans, coastal resilience, ocean finance, and blue foods. We also had a seaside chat with ADB Vice President Ahmed Saeed and the honorable ministers from different countries in the region. In case you missed some of the sessions and would like to go back and watch them, don't worry. They are going to be up on our website on this virtual platform for the next 6 months. So there are a lot of uncertain things in life, but you can be certain that these videos will be available for you to watch and rewatch for the next 6 months. If you are new to this platform, if you are using it for the first time, there are a few tabs that you can spend some time exploring. We have the agenda. So on the left side of your screen, you'll see different tabs. There's the agenda for you to see what's been happening the past 2 days. We also have links to different knowledge resources. We've put together different guidebooks, manuals, articles, etc., that are related to the thematic tracks that you can read more about. And we also have a virtual expo. Please don't forget to check out the virtual expo. There are 40 virtual booths that you can learn what's going on all over the world. There are oceans and tech solutions happening all over the world. So you can take some time to explore them and even reach out to the booth owners. And of course, this forum would not be possible without our partners. We have the WWF Oceans Team, World Fish, Save Philippine Seas, along with the ASEAN Catalytic Green Finance Facility, the Japan Fund for Poverty Reduction, and the Korean E-Knowledge Partnership Fund. And with that, we are ready to play. We have our circular plastics economy clinic, and we call this a project Playshop. And I'm going to be explaining to you in just a bit why we call it a circular plastics economy clinic. All right, so let's see. This is going to be interactive, so we are expecting you to be part of this. We're going to present a fictional case study on recycling infrastructure in the region, and we need your participation. We are going to ask you to log into menti.com. You can use a second device or another browser, but this is going to be interactive. You are going to be our panel of experts along with the real people who are going to be our panel of experts. You're going to meet them shortly, but do log into menti.com on your second device and type in 87697999. So we will make sure that you're on the platform. And to test if you are already on the platform, this is something that we do at Save Philippine Seas when we have virtual workshops and play shops. We can't see who are logged on, but we always try to do like a vibe check of how people are feeling today. And because this is a Healthy Oceans program, we've chosen some marine animals that you can feel aligned with as part of your spirit animal for today. It is a Friday morning where I am. So tell us, how are you feeling? Are you feeling like a whale, mighty and unstoppable? Are you feeling like a sea star? Ooh, the first ones that came out, star and shark. Oh, okay. We see the shark continuing to move. We have the sea turtle, which is slowly but surely moving along. I'm surprised we're not seeing some buffer fish here. It is the end of a long week and a long month. So I think I'm feeling somewhere, like I think 25% of me feels like a puffer fish, but generally, let's say sea star. I'm feeling like a sea star this beautiful Friday morning in Manila. Okay, so we see some, increasing. There is a bit of a delay, so most people are somewhere in the middle feeling like a sea turtle. Okay, so at least we know that there are people tuning in and watching us. We can move on to the next part. We just wanted to make sure that we have a sense of how people are feeling. So I know that not everyone watching right now knows what a circular economy is. So I'll give you a crash course. When we talk about the circular economy, we have to talk about the linear economy, which is what a circular economy is not. And this is what we call the take, make, and dispose model. So we take materials, we extract resources, we create things, everything you're touching right now, everything that you're using right now, we use it, and then we dispose of it, we throw it away. But we know that when we throw something away, it doesn't really go away. So it pollutes our environment. The other side of the linear economy is what we call the circular economy. And there's a paper that got published saying that there are 114 definitions of this, probably more. But for the purposes of this Playshop, this is circular economy model. You see it on the right side, where we reuse and remake and recycle things that are created. So nothing is wasted. It all becomes part of a loop. In a circle, in a hoop that never ends, as per Pocahontas. So in the circular economy, there are three principles, and this is the one that's been promoted by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. They are thought leaders in circular economy. So principle number one, we have design out waste and pollution. So from the very beginning, you're already thinking about the end of life of an object. You know that when you stop using it, it can be reused for something else. And that links to principle number two, where we keep products and materials in use for as long as possible. So that includes reusing, refill models. And third is probably the hardest one, to regenerate natural systems, so that when we're extracting resources from our environment, we are making sure that they are regenerating, and we're not just taking and taking and taking, and we make sure that it heals. And if that is so confusing, I want you to imagine a coconut tree. In the Philippines, where I am from, this is what we call the tree of life. And every single part of a coconut tree has a purpose. You can use the leaves, let's say, for food wrappers. It's a very common, in Southeast Asia especially, it's a common way to wrap food. We can use coconut sugar, the ever famous coconut water being sold in carton boxes, in beverage cartons. We also have coconut oil, coconut milk. The wood can be used for lumber. The husk is a cleaning material. We have coconut meat, which we use for different kinds of dishes. It provides us shade. And at the end of the life of a coconut tree, it becomes compost for other coconut trees. So this is a perfect example of a circular economy. And with that, you are now circular economy experts, and you are ready to join this project Playshop. So you might be wondering, what is a project Playshop? I've never heard this before. Well, this is something very intentional. We always attend workshops, right? And I'm sure people watching right now have attended 1 million billion workshops. And we reframe this by calling it a play shop. I got this term from when I used to teach theater to kids, we would call them play shops. And what we invite you to do is to play. We are going to present a fictional project, and we invite you to suspend your disbelief. You're not allowed to say like, that can't be real, or that's not a real city. You just suspend your disbelief and enter this world with us. We are going to provide you some prompts that you will answer. So you're already within the circular economy Mentimeter play shop. So we'll just ask you some questions, and don't worry, your answers are going to be completely anonymous. There are no right or wrong answers. This is just a play shop, and we invite you to play. It's an invitation and permission to have fun. This is also a rapid brainstorming exercise. So we only have an hour to get through this fictional play shop. So don't overthink it. I'm sure we overthink a lot of things in life, but for this purpose, just have fun, write the first thing that comes to your mind. I also know that our audience comes from all over the world. We also have people coming in from different perspectives, people working in blue foods and coastal resilience and ocean finance and plastic and even renewable energy, etc. So what we want is for you to bring in your perspective. Circular economy is an interdisciplinary field, and it is only richer when we get perspectives from all the people that are watching right now and that are part of this Playshop. And most importantly, please have fun. That is rule number one. And with that, I invite you to join me later on, we are going to bring in our panel of experts. We have Dave Albao, who's the Executive Director of Philippine Reef and Rainforest Conservation Foundation. He's done a lot of work on refilling and on working with coastal communities, trying to reduce plastic at source, but also doing a lot of behavior change campaigns. We're also joined by Jenna Jambeck later, who is a distinguished professor in environmental engineering at the University of Georgia and a National Geographic Fellow. Her studies have sparked international discussion and action on marine plastic pollution and plastic pollution. So her insights to this Playshop will be very valuable. We also have Lerwan Liu, who is a director for the Circular Economy Accelerator Knowledge Exchange Innovation Center and founder of the STEAM platform. She's based in Bangkok and has worked with different networks, bringing different stakeholders together for a circular economy. She's also edited books and worked a lot with youth, women, and young leaders to create or to improve circular economy initiatives. So with that, you will meet them in a few minutes. I will now introduce our case study, the Battleground. So welcome to the country Banjir. This is a country that is very densely populated, and our case study focuses on building a recycling facility, a bottle-to-bottle recycling facility in Banjir, the first of its kind. Okay, so in this country, it's densely populated. There are 100 million people, and it's very flood prone. So you'll see the map on the right side of your screen. You'll see there are many different islands that are making up this country. And our project site is in the city of Saram, the capital of Banjir. So the capital of Banjir, Saram, has gained some not a good reputation because it's been named as one of the most polluted cities in the world. The river is it was published last year, which caused some commotion with the city government of Saram. They were not very happy that that the river was named as a large polluter. And it turns out that in this cleanup that they did, PET bottles were the top waste polluting the coastal city. So in this study, we found PET bottles on the sidewalks, on the streets, and in the coastal area. So now we need to do something about it. So the city government is going to build a bottle-to-bottle recycling facility. This is super exciting because it has cutting-edge technology and industry-leading best practices. What are these best practices? It's also been called the safest and most advanced recycling process for PET bottles. So if you don't know what PET bottles are, those are the common bottles that you see for water and for soda, for juice. So they're everywhere. Now, the proposal also says that there's a projected capacity of 60,000 metric tons. Can you imagine? That's 4 billion PET bottles a year. That's a lot of PET bottles that we could be recycling. And the output, so how many they're going to make, is 32,000 metric tons of recycled PET resin. So, are you ready to create this facility with me? There are 3 main outputs. When we build this facility, we are improving the PET bottle waste collection system. We're also creating inclusive livelihood opportunities. And we're also enhancing and understanding of the city government on solid waste management and related policies. So as you can see, when we build a recycling facility, it's not just the infrastructure, but there are many moving parts around it that will make it successful. So we have a lot of work to do because in the next, let's say, 45 minutes, you, the audience, you're part of a team of experts for this very famous philanthropic institution known for investing in environmental projects. And you've been approached by the city of Saram to co-invest in this facility. At the end of this session at 10 o'clock, we have to submit a recommendation to the board based on your scoping field visit. So we need to take this seriously because the future of Saram City depends on your hands. So make sure you are logged into menti.com and enter the code 87697999 because we need to know your initial reactions or insights on this proposed facility. Do you think that it is the solution? Is it promising? You have more questions, or are you skeptical? And it's now time to bring in our panel of experts. Welcome Dave, Jenna, and Lerwood. Hi.
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 Welcome.
Hi.
Okay,
Thanks for having us.
Yes, we're so excited to learn about your reactions. Okay, so can we project there? That's perfect. Okay, so we see a lot of people find this a promising solution, but let's move to the next question. We are going to ask our panel of experts what studies could be done for the project preparation to maximize circular plastics economy. And while we're waiting for people to jump in with their answers, I have a question, and let's start with Jenna. So Jenna, you have authored many landmark studies on global plastic pollution. I remember seeing your last name so many times, and it feels like, it doesn't feel like you're a real person because we just see your last name quoted in so many papers. So when you publish these studies, what impact did you hope that these studies would have when you first published them?
Yeah. I think sort of briefly, you just hope they'll have an impact, because I think, some researchers are, feel like they're doing work that's just sitting on a shelf. And so I think, for me, I've always tried to look at where there's a need. And I think what I saw, starting out, even before I published sort of that seminal paper in 2015, was a need for data in this space. I mean, I've been looking at this issue since 2001. And so, I didn't see a lot of data. And I immediately, when I heard about, plastic and waste ending up in the ocean, was thinking, we must be doing something wrong on land. I'm an environmental engineer. So that's where I was like, that was the mystery that I had. And it wasn't really until that NC working group with scientists from all over the world, we could ask that question, and I had the right collaborators to be able to try to answer it. I knew in that space that there were a lot of people who wanted that information because they were using, we were using an estimate from like 1970 something at that point. So I'm like, this is a really good, we need this number to kind of move forward. But I did not anticipate the extensive use of that and the actual impact that it had. I don't think there's any way you could anticipate that. And the media picking it up and just sort of it taking on a life of its own. I never anticipated that, but I always feel responsible to try to communicate the data the way we intended it.
When you said you've been working on this issue since 2001, it must also be weird to in 2001, people weren't talking about this. And now it's like on the headline of, it's on the cover of Science. It's on the headline of all kinds, everything from BuzzFeed to CNN is covering plastic pollution.
It is weird. Yes, it's such a change. I mean, I literally had someone tell me in marine sciences that nobody cared about this issue. I went to them, I said, I want to study this for my PhD. And they said, well, no one cares about that. And they were, that was accurate at the time, really. I mean, I was like, well, I do. I mean, there was a few, but in general, the public, it didn't have the talk, that we see now and the way people care about it, which goes to show you, I think, all of what has all come together. And I think what makes me optimistic about making headway on it.
Great. Okay, let's take a few moments to check what people have been answering. I see public consultation, social preparation. I also saw earlier, oh, this is a good one. Study on community attitudes and behaviors on plastic use. I think that's a good segue to ask Dave. Dave, you did a lot of work on setting up micro refilling stations in micro and small enterprises. So what kind of preparation did you do? And that seems like such a big challenge, behavior change and working in coastal communities. So tell us more about that.
Thank you, Anna. So most of the time when we're introducing something, we're talking about technology and feasibility. But I'm glad in our Menti, we are seeing a lot of social studies that are needed to understand the target market, which is the city of Saram in this case study. This is also what we've done in our little project in Negros. It's very small, but we actually took a year to do social preparedness. So that includes a lot of surveys, a lot of socioeconomic and demographic studies. But my favorite is, of course, the community consultations. These could be focus group discussions or targeted discussions with stakeholders or forums. And the qualitative and also even the quantitative data will really inform the project on the feasibility. And by the way, Anna, the first step of the process that we use, which is design thinking, is empathy. And I believe that on empathy, on how people behave, will really make, in our case, it will make or break the refilling project, or in this case, in my opinion, the recycling facility. If no one's going to support the facility collection points, it's not going to work. The output that we need, the feedstock that we need, which is 60,000 metric tons a year, the capacity will not be reached.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for sharing that. And I would have to disagree with you. It is not a little project. I think you're being humble. It took a lot of effort to make that happen. And it's a good example. All right, let's move on to the next question. We see a lot of environmental impact assessment. There's also life cycle analysis. I also saw one comment about like getting rid of PET models altogether. So there are different perspectives that we're seeing here in our Menti, which is fantastic. So let's move on to the next question, which is, what are the benefits that a circular plastics economy could bring to Saram City? So while we're waiting for more people to answer, now I'll ask you, Lerwin, is there a bottle-to-bottle recycling facility? Is it an example of a circular economy? Why or why not? And how can you have recycling facilities in Thailand that works with plastic bottles? Maybe you can share a bit about that as well. Okay, you have to unmute.
Unmute. All right.
Yes. Yeah.
Hi.
Okay, we can hear you.
Yeah, well, it is a part of the circular economy. If you look at plastics overall, PET is just a fraction of a lot of the plastic we consume day to day. Now, if you just focus on bottle to bottle, if you want to keep PET in the loop, closed loop, like I explained to us earlier, it is circular economy, but it's not enough. I think when we work with SMEs and startups and also as well as big companies in Thailand, and we find that there are companies like even SMEs are dealing with not just PETs but all plastics. Let me give you an example of a 20-year-old family business that specializes in plastic recycling and turn that into household products. I mean, they design a very good-looking products and use exclusively recycled plastic, and of PET included. And recently they started a sister company, which now is startup, and to close the loop of all the plastics, aiming at Bangkok now. Now they really try not only to address PET plastic, but all. Basically, personally, I actually, because of learning what they do, I actually inspire me as a consumer to separate my plastic, different kinds of plastic, hard ones, the thin ones, and the plastic bottles, PET bottles, and all different kinds, and actually deposit what is deposit in the designated locations, which are partners with these companies. So that is actually helping changing consumer like me, what they're doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they are also building a network.
Yes.
To actually collect and segregate those plastics to make their recycling more efficient. And
so with your answer,
for other startups too.
So with your answer, we see different threads. We see like the network that we need to build. We see collection points. We see efficient waste segregation, which I think is something that I personally, and I know a lot of people struggle with this as well. So let's just take a few moments to check what some of the answers are. What are the benefits that a circular plastics economy could bring? We have green jobs, better economy, lower carbon emissions, reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, livelihood for the community. Exactly, that's one of the aims of this, one of the outputs. And yes, healthy bodies of water. So you see that there are many, many benefits of a circular plastics economy. So let's move to the next question. We are going to be asking about risks. What are the risks of establishing this bottle-to-bottle recycling facility in Saram City, knowing that the government is the one leading this? And of course, our philanthropic institution. So I have a question for Jenna. You've done a bit of work on bottle-to-bottle recycling facilities. You told me about this. And tell us more about what that experience was like. What did you learn and what risks did you see in that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been able to, visit and see some facilities and talk with lots of people and, think about the design. But I think looking at how this fits into the wider system, you can't just rely on this technology and think, this is our solution just here. It can't be in a vacuum. It needs to be connected to everything sort of around it. Mm-hmm. And so I think putting this in, it needs to be a part of an integrated system. You need to think about changes, upstream changes and systemic changes. And one thing I saw in your first question that I really liked, someone said design for recyclability. We can't just say, okay, now we've got this facility, we can make whatever we want and, it's going to be bottle to bottle. Where I've seen it work best is where only clear and blue bottles are allowed to be made, because if you think about it, if you make a red one, everything is going to be, it colors everything. It's like paint. Once the pigments are there, you can't take them out. So thinking about those design standards, not just putting in this facility as sort of, your solution. I think it also doesn't mean you have license to make as many PET bottles. That was the other great input on that first question. Ultimately, if we think about leakage as a component of how much we use, right? Because some of it inherently starts to leak out, then we still want to reduce how much we're using in the first place, right? So that component can't be lost as we look at putting in a facility like this. But I do have to say I was quite impressed where I did see all of these things in place. And a deposit return system, so incentives and involving the community in the process. It did work, and I actually was doubtful that it would. Now, realize that infinite recycling doesn't happen. You always need some virgin polymer, so at some point, you sort of run out of that recycled polymer, so it's not an infinite loop, and that is another sort of downside of recycling plastic. So there's a lot of things to take into account. It's not just, here's a technology, and now we can do whatever.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And when you were saying incentives, I want to highlight one of the answers here where it could increase demand. Here, it doesn't reduce demand for plastic bottles, it could increase it. Because I think I've worked with some communities that are like, it's going to be recycled anyway, so we can just keep making them. And like you said, we also have to look at reducing it so that we don't keep creating this problem.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the best waste is no waste because it takes energy to recycle. So even though you're recycling it, it still takes effort and energy to do all of that.
The best waste is no waste. We should put that on like a bumper sticker or a tote bag. Yeah, a button. There are also some really good answers here. Theft and corruption. I mean, we have to be realistic that these are real risks. Slow or lack of behavior change across the value chain. There's also, I saw an answer earlier about lack of continuity. And when we work with the government, there's always that risk because government terms in a lot of countries are very short. I really like this one as well. Lack of adaptation to local context. There was another one here, this one. The model introduced must be designed to fit the country's local context. And this is, I think we get this wrong a lot. I don't know.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, someone will say, oh, I've seen, and as I was sort of speaking, I'm like, oh, I've seen this work in different places. If you do not take into account the local context, something, a solution can just be completely rejected. Not work. So it's just so important that, local stakeholders are involved from the get-go to express their needs. The first step, I love the first step, empathy. I would add listen. Yes. And that's a part of being empathetic, but, I just like to remind people of that as well.
Yeah, and it's like active listening because what I facilitated a lot of dialogues for plastic pollution. And I find that one of the mistakes that stakeholders do is that we listen to react. We listen to react and to negate other people, other stakeholders, but there is so much richness that can happen and magic that can happen when we listen to each other, Okay.
And take into account local expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you work with a lot of local partners when you do research as well. And I know you're very particular about that. Okay. We can move on to the next question. We've talked a lot about stakeholders and the importance of stakeholders. So in addition to the government of Saram, who are the other stakeholders you would involve? Would you talk to the beverage companies, the informal waste sector? The informal waste sector has come up several times. You have supermarkets and public markets and maybe others. And with that, while we're waiting for more answers to come in, let's ask Dave a question on stakeholders because you have a lot of work on stakeholders, different kinds of stakeholders. In your experience, which are the stakeholders that often get left out of the dialogue? And if we were to have a stakeholder consultation for this, who would you make sure to invite?
So on the options on the screen, Anna, the marginalized sector would be the informal waste sector that don't have economic power. But other than that, from my experience, I would usually also target the media sector or any sector involved in community communications education. In moving the needle, basically, to community adoption. This is something that I've learned, really hard in our work because without the support of the local media, nobody's going to talk about the interventions. Also, I would like to raise that if we're going to focus on the collection aspect of this recycling facility, a lot of, at least in my context, a lot of these tasks would be given to women at home who are doing unpaid care well. So, they will be in the household. The women might be the one having to deal with the trash, right? They need to sort it. And unfortunately, the men would probably say, oh, you just do it because you do all the work at the house. So this is also something very important to learn. And there are a lot of studies being done as well on waste and gender. So anyway, about stakeholders, basically, again, marginalized sectors need to be there when we're planning the projects because we don't want them to be further displaced, right?
Right.
For example, the informal waste sector, how can we capacitate them to be a part of this solution? And then second would be the media or even the schools, right? Anyone who might be involved or could be a part of the community education and information campaigns. And third are the women that might have also be added. We will be adding work to them already that's not paid at home.
More work for us women? Stop this nonsense, Dave. Stop it. Okay, well, I want to pick out what you said about engaging the media. Last night, I was listening to this podcast, and he's a Broadway actor, and he said that the etymology of entertain, of the word entertain, is to hold someone's attention until you deliver information. And I thought that was so beautiful. I was thinking about how we do that when we talk about circular plastics economy or waste management. They're not the sexiest topic. I think they're sexy. Not everyone thinks they're sexy. So we have to reimagine how we're going to deliver this kind of information while holding people's attention. And yes, definitely women have a role to play in waste management. And how do we engage them how do we engage us without tiring us more? Right. Okay. So we can talk about that a little bit later. Let's get back to that point. I'm also curious to find out what Lerwin and Jenna have to say about the role of women and informal waste sectors. And we see in this screen that the answer number one is the highest, the one with the most number of answers is the informal waste sector. And there's always a risk of removing them from the waste value chain once we have these like high-tech infrastructure out. So it's good that people are thinking about that. There's an equal result for beverage companies and supermarkets, and then we have others, which I'm sure we have NGOs, we have schools, we have media. We see in this slide that circular economy is really a multi-stakeholder effort. So we've already talked about benefits, we've talked about stakeholders, and now let's check out what are the challenges of this facility. I'm sure there are a lot. So let's talk about, these are the choices. We have reverse logistics, and if you're not familiar with this term, it just means like taking back what we've distributed. So if I am using a soda bottle, how do I get it to the recycling facility? So that will have to collect. There are no right or wrong answers. We just make sure that you check one for the sake of discussion. But we also have feedstock. How do we get as many 60,000 metric tons of plastic? How do we get that to the recycling facility in a densely populated country like Banjir? And then, of course, energy equipment. This requires a lot of energy. And of course, community buy-in. How will you get people to change behavior? How will you mobilize the community to make sure that they clean and dry and separate the PET bottles? Because in the PET bottle, you have the label, which is a different kind of plastic, and the cap is also a different kind of plastic. So there's we have a lot of work to do. That's just what I'm trying to say. And we have others. So let me leave this on screen so that you can keep answering. But I want to check with Lerwin, what do you see as a challenge for this, and how would we address it in your experience working in a recycling facility or knowing the recycling facility in Bangkok? Okay, you have to unmute again. Yes.
Hi. Yeah.
Yes.
What I had in mind earlier about this startup called Surplus. So the challenges really link also to the stakeholder you mentioned earlier. Really, there are challenges along the whole value chain and also different role of different stakeholders, actually. So first, I always start with the consumer. Like, we have to be disciplined enough to separate, clean, and drop off at the right place. So that's one. And then also as a consumer, we are willing to buy product made out of recycled materials.
Yes.
So that's sort of like two roles we need to play. And that needs some education, that needs some discipline. Like, I have to discipline myself every single day to wash every, plastic waste that I use, or try not to use them, but sometimes you don't have a choice. And then if you move up, then, they have, like, in a community in Thailand where I live, there are cleaners in the condo that actually separate the waste. And they separate, but they don't clean.
Oh.
And then it gets sold to the recyclers. And so you have every community will collect, will segregate and collect, and then sold. And then later on, when it goes to the recycling facility, there's a lot of other extra work to do. It's a very complicated process. And then for a startup, obviously capital, finance is critical. Because you need to hire people, you need to build network, you need to build a facility. So in the serum case, You have financing already. You have the technology. Now, as we discussed earlier, technology doesn't solve all the problems. So all these are challenges, logistics, and so it's quite complicated. How to go about, and of course, people, salaried like us, we like to support a startup like Surpass and connect them to the right financing mechanism and support them to obtain public financing as well as private financing to bring public-private partnership together. And help them build community as well. So it's a long process, but we are working on
it. So we already have one tote bag slogan, which is the best waste is no waste, and we have another one. Circular plastics economy, it's complicated. I think that's the bottom line that we're getting at here. But also I want to pick out something that you said about finance, that yes, we do need capital. And that's why it's fantastic that ADB, which is the Multilateral Development Bank, is already exploring how we can support, how ADB as an institution can support recycling infrastructure. There's already a project, an investment within the Rama, which is a recycling facility as well. And it's not just also the capital, but the capital to build it is one piece of the problem, but the other one is like sustaining the operations of this, right? Like we need to think long term and not just like build a beautiful facility and then after a year we're like, oh, we don't have enough money to run it. So those are things we need to consider. And we're now, community buy-in is the highest answer here, and you already spoke a lot about how we need community buy-in and behavior change. So you said about like separating the waste, cleaning and drying it, make sure it gets collected, make sure it's brought to the facility. So community buy-in definitely is a huge piece of any circular economy project, especially when it comes to recycling facilities. And now we're ready to move on to the last question for our audience. How do we measure the impact of this project? And for this last question, while we're waiting for the answers of the audience, I want to ask each one of you, if you were part of this, you are part of this panel of experts making a recommendation to the board of this anonymous, this secret philanthropic institution, what for you would be the top metric based on your experience and your expertise? Let's start with Jenna.
Okay, so this is a bit, you're asking a scientist to pick one piece of data.
Okay, you can have three.
Yeah, well, no, you know me, I'm going to have 7 because I'm going to say that the circularity assessment protocol, which includes both quantitative and qualitative data, really sort of like, I mean, to me, you want to measure this holistic circularity. So I know a lot of people, and that includes sort of those 7 spokes, right? The input, the community, product design and materials use, and then collection, end of cycle, which we hope to move away from waste. So we just call it end of cycle, and then leakage. And each one of those gives you a little bit of an indicator. So, I mean, I'm sorry, I know it's a non-answer to say sort of like all of the above, but it really is this holistic picture. A lot of people focus on that leakage component, though, to kind of say, well, if it's not ending up in the environment, but to me, there's so much more to it. So, sorry.
No, don't apologize. And actually, one of the answers, if you see, is the circularity assessment protocol metrics. Maybe one of my teammates. Well, maybe one of my teammates answered that worked on the circularity assessment protocol. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I know this is a difficult question to just choose one because, like we've talked about earlier, there are so many different parts of this that will make it successful. So yes, definitely agree with you that we can't. Community feedback in terms of employment and change. Dave, what about you? What do you think is the top metric? I feel like you got surprised that I called you. You're like, what, me? Okay, so tell us what your top metric would be.
Based on what I hear from the communities I work with, it would always be income. However, I would like to say that sometimes we don't, account for the externalized costs with, for example, in the statute or before the facility, there would be a lot of expenses for, let's say, solid waste management or keeping the landfill, right? And in fact, the bottles are also managed at the landfill level in the Philippines. Like some PET bottles go there forever. Like they have a section for that. So what I'm saying is it's probably income or financial metrics, but fully accounting for the savings from the non-facility, setup. But of course, it would also mean increased income for themselves, not just for the city. So they need to feel that circular economy is going to benefit them in that sense, because once we're able to onboard them with the financial advantages of this facility, they would be continuously feeding it. It would lead to the other benefits, or lead to the other increase. For example, in participation, wiser use of energy. All of those challenges I feel in my experience would follow if the community and the government is convinced that it's financially advantageous to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I like the answer on the screen. It's like all caps income, because we cannot talk about circular economy without, the word circular economy has economy in it, right? So we have to be able to talk about finance and solutions to generate income and sustain these operations. How about you, Lerwin? What would be your top metric?
Well, since we work with entrepreneurs, I would like to see this whole economy could empower more entrepreneurs and support them, try to support entrepreneurs to address our waste and reduce waste and transition to circular economy. So the number of startups, the number of entrepreneurs that could be grown and out of this program will be our matrix.
Yeah, definitely. We need to engage different types of entrepreneurs. And that actually provides an opportunity for you to visit the virtual expo. We have a lot of, the plastics track actually has the most number of booths. There are exciting emerging initiatives that are being featured in the virtual expo. So please do check it out. They are a big part of the circular economy, the small and medium enterprises, the startups, and all these different parts of the circular economy, just like contributing to make this happen. Okay, so let's take a moment to check out some of the answers. We have number of community awareness, increased community support and buy-in, M&E data. Jenna will be happy to see some data requirements here. Local buy-in, behavior change. Conduct metric of bottles collected, obviously. So it's nice here. I love that this set of answers, we have both qualitative and quantitative data points, or like markers for success. And with that, okay, we have amount of plastics redirected, polluted from waterways. And this is we have a really good board of experts watching us. So I'd like to thank all of the audience members for joining us in this dialogue. And can you believe it? We're almost done with our plastics clinic. So thank you, everyone. And it's time to have a speed round with our panel of experts. So we can already close the screen. And I want to ask each one of you, what do you think most people get wrong about the circular economy? Let's start with Jenna.
Sure. I think when people focus on the end of life. So just sort of thinking, well, we just have to make everything that is, sort of coming down the pipe, so to speak, at us circular. Like, how do we recycle all of this? And again, and this is kind of what I said when we talked about some of the risks of this kind of facility. We need a lot of those upstream changes. We need to design out things that don't work, right? There's either change this end of pipe system to fit everything, but there's just too much. That's partly why plastic is so useful, because it can be so many different things, and that's exactly what makes it so hard to manage at its end of whatever, end of cycle, end of life. And so we really need to, that what is wrong is that we really need to make those upstream changes, reduce, redesign, all of that needs to happen way before we get it right with the circular economy.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why the circular economy starts with like redesigning things to make sure that when we're redesigning or designing, we are imagining how to design out waste and pollution. How about you, Dave?
Yep.
What do people get wrong?
It's connected to what Jenna said, that a lot of people think the circular plastics economy is just about recycling or recycling facilities. So definitely not. In our work here in Negros in the Philippines, we talk about wala usik. So that's my second thing that people think it always has to be new. Circular economy always has to be something in terms of technology. It has to be new. But if you look at our culture, there are already circular practices that we can tap into. That's why we call it wala usik. It's the local dialect for nothing is wasted. I believe that we have practices and traditions in the past that we can bring in design of the products that we consume. And then the third is that it's just about the technology. It's not about the technology. Obviously, a lot of the things that we see on the Playshop is a lot about community as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick out something there. You said that we have a lot of traditions and like ways that we used to do things, but how do we do that in a world that's not the same as it was? Like we have more people, we have more stuff. Like, what do you think about that?
No, we can learn from the past. We can learn from those. Okay, let me share an example. Banana leaves as packaging or pandan leaves as packaging. You know, the guso in the Philippines, the one with the covers the sticky rice. I'm not saying that we're going to use native packaging for all of the things that we use, but can modernize this. Can there a way that we can invest in supporting local industries of, let's say, prefabricated or making sure they're sanitary, making sure they pass our modern standards? Can we modernize emissions? But I mean, really, it's just about learning how things work unfortunately, plastic. Like, are there other? But it's not just about the material, Anna. It's really about our mentality. When we started doing instant products, disposable products, things got out of hand. So,
what about you, Lerwin? What do you think most people get wrong about the circular economy?
I think circular economy for me is personal. It's not just my work, but also change our lifestyle. For example, I do not use PET bottle water. I carry my own water bottle. I refill my bottle. So this is the refuse part and the reduce part at a personal level, I think is critical. So it's not about, we're talking about at work. We actually bring circular economy into our lives, every single life.
I love that.
Everyday life, and also our choice of consumption.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think when we talk about circular economy as a system, it can get overwhelming. But when you see it as part of the daily choices that you make and the impact that those choices have, not just on you, but the other people and the environment and the community, then it becomes easier to understand than like all these principles and all these numbers, right? Exactly. Okay, so I want to end on a hopeful note, of course. As an impatient optimist, I want to end on a hopeful note, and I want to ask each one of you, what makes you hopeful about the circular plastics economy? Dave, let's start with you.
Well, ADB is hosting the Healthy Oceans Tech and Finance Forum this week. Really, when I was 10 years ago, talking about all these topics seemed to be a very, hippie thing to do, right? I mean, environmentalism is always just about the protests and activism. But now we can see financing institutions, technology enablers, governments. We're all working together now. So this makes me cool because the bigwigs are talking about it. We can see it here in this 3 days of the forum. This is something that I'm really hopeful about, Anna.
Ray, I love that. I hope ADB is listening. Okay, Lerwin, how about you? What makes you hopeful about the circular
Actually, two things make me really excited. Every single day, I meet new people who are passionate about circular economy and practicing it every single day. It doesn't matter where I go. So that's really hopeful. That's really drive what's going on. And second is the change is happening, the opportunities available for entrepreneurs. It's so exciting. There's so many opportunities for us to change, to make a difference. Changing is exciting. So there you go.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like it's such an exciting time to be alive in this space and to be meeting all kinds of people. And the virtual platform has also enabled us to meet all kinds of people. So we started with Jenna, and now let's end with Jenna. Jenna, what makes you hopeful about the circular plastics economy?
Well, I'm gonna first echo and say this panel has been amazing. So thank you, Anna, for hosting. And I want to circle back to something that Dave said and give another quick example. I love going back to practices and traditions, that we've had in the past. And I think you can integrate that, and like with Luren's entrepreneurs, with technology, like for reuse, like, RFID embedded components where, you've got refill. And I'm sure Dave probably has, some of these systems in place. Technology facilitates our convenient lifestyle, but yet in a reuse, tradition that we've had historically. So I think there's ways to kind of mesh those two together. And so that's part of what makes me hopeful, is that we can, recapture some of our practices and traditions, yet hopefully use technology in a smart way, thinking about systems always, and our impacts, how everything is connected to each other like a thread, through everything in the world. But also, I just want to say, also echo the change that I've seen. So for me, starting to work on this issue in 2001, when, we were told nobody cares about it, to having it be at a forum like this, having, leaders around the world, having a global agreement being discussed at UNEA, next month. That's, tremendous. It makes us all, I think, tremendously hopeful for what might come. So that, I think, is where the optimism comes from. So
Thank
hopefully
you so much.
will, continue to happen, the change.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just like thinking about how in 2001, no one cared about this topic, and now it's everywhere. There's so much to be hopeful about. And we have different institutions and stakeholders and organizations that are figuring out what to do to be part of the circular plastics economy. And yes, there are a lot of challenges. Yes, there are a lot of questions. There's a lot of debate, but it's all these disagreements and discussions and debates that will move this forward and move the needle. Like, we don't learn from sameness, right? So thank you so much, Jenna, Lerwin, and Dave. This has been so fun learning from all of you and learning from the audience as well. Thank you for joining me. I am Ana Oposa. I have been your MC and your moderator, and the day is not done. We are just getting started. We have several spotlight sessions for you, and we have also in the plastics track, we have the virtual booth spotlight by the government of Japan, so don't miss that. And we have a closing at the end, and you are free to explore the virtual booths at the virtual expo. You can also connect with fellow attendees through the activity feed. You'll see it on the left side of your screen. And you can also message fellow attendees and speakers at the networking option. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being part of the Playshop and playing along. I'd like to also thank our panelists, Jenna, Lerwin, and Dave. And enjoy the rest of the day. This has been Ana Oposa, and I will see you at the closing later. Bye.